Hey, you're a scientist. We're starting your unit on the hydrosphere. This is Unit 3, Week 1, and this is a very short unit. It's just 2 weeks. And we have already learned a lot of this information in class in your 8th grade science course, and we're just elaborating on the information a little bit more and looking at things at different perspective in the Earth Environmental course. So, yeah, you're drinking dinosaur pee. So, all of the water on Earth that we have is all the water that we have on Earth. More water just doesn't magically appear when you turn the faucet on. So the water that we have is the water that has been in existence on the earth and has been continuously recycled through the water cycle over Earth's 4 billion year history. So your first activity is a discussion post about dinosaur pee and what your thoughts are on knowing now that you are drinking dinosaur pee and other organisms pee as well. So your online notebook, you'll notice, is a little bit longer, and that's because you only have 2 weeks for this particular unit on the hydrosphere. So here's a paragraph reflection about your favorite beverage. So you'll see that in a few moments, and you have a vocabulary review as well, and then water cycle diagram to post there, journey of a water droplet, and then some notes about how pollution can affect groundwater. Then we have a river diagram, so this is based on a river system, and some questions about flooding and flash floods. And again, make sure that you submit your notebook in Canvas when you are finished. So looking at your week 1 overview for Hydrosphere, if you look at the pacing that I emailed you guys, you'll see what you should be reaching by halfway there, midweek on Wednesday, and then the rest of the activity should be finished up by Friday. So here's a little picture of the water cycle. You can find all kinds of different diagrams and illustrations of water cycle, and some of them are a little lengthier and a little more detailed than others, but this is a very simplified one. So just to recap what you guys have learned in class, evaporation is going from liquid to a gas, so the water molecules are heating up, and as those water molecules are heating up, they are becoming less dense, so they will rise into the air. Condensation is going to be when they cool down, so that water vapor that is the gas form of water is going to cool down, and when it cools down around particulate matter, that particulate matter like dust or smoke particles will serve as condensation nuclei for the water droplets to cling onto. So condensation is going from gas, water vapor, to liquid, and that's when clouds can form. Precipitation is going to be when you have rain, sleet, snow, or hail that's falling from the clouds, and that's going to be basically after you have condensation occur and you continually have a lot of that liquid water that's accumulating in the clouds. Infiltration is just water soaking down into the soil, so that water is literally just moving down through the rock particles and down through the soil into the ground. And when that infiltration has occurred, the water that has soaked down into the soil is going to become part of the groundwater. So it will basically fill the aquifer, the underground rock layer that can hold water. It will fill that permeable rock layer. Transpiration is going to be water that is evaporating from plants, and that will occur through the stomata. So the stomata are the little holes in the underside of plant leaves, and those are responsible for gas exchange. So the stomata will not only take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen, but it can also release water vapor as well. Runoff is water that is moving with the lay of the land, basically like kind of moving downhill, and a lot of times that is either going to be from snow melt if it's in higher elevations, or if you have a lot of rain, basically puddles of water that are kind of moving across Earth's surface. And then this is a watershed. So this picture is showing you the largest watershed in the United States. So that's the Mississippi River watershed. So a watershed is just basically an area of land that directs water, any water in that land, to the major river. So this Mississippi River watershed is made of multiple smaller river basins. So the Ohio is going to take up part of North Carolina, and we're in the Broad River Basin, and a lot of our water is going to move into the Atlantic Ocean. And then some of it, if you're in the mountains, that water is going to get directed into the Ohio River Basin and then is going to end up as a part of the major Mississippi River watershed and will end up in the Gulf of Mexico, which is still part of the Atlantic Ocean. And then a divide is basically a ridge of land that's going to separate watersheds. So the divide that we have right here is going to be the Appalachian Mountains, and then on this side, you have the Rocky Mountains. So that serves as the major divides in the United States. So that's our Western Continental Divide and then the Eastern Continental Divide. And then you have smaller ridges within here that kind of separate these watersheds that make up a part of the Mississippi River watershed. So how much water is on Earth? Well, we know we drink dinosaur pee. So the water that is on Earth is all the water that we have. So the distribution of this water is shown right here, shown how that breaks down. So we have basically about 3/4 of our surface that is water, and 97% of that water is saline. 97% of that water is ocean water. It's marine water. It's salt water. So that means 3% is fresh water. So of that 3%, we've already talked about in class that most of it is going to be frozen. So most of it is in ice caps, glaciers. It's frozen water. So it's inaccessible. So of that 3% fresh water on Earth, most of it is going to be frozen. So if it's frozen, that's not talking about teeny tiny little ice cubes in your drink. That is talking about big, huge chunks of glaciers that takes up a lot of land area or a large volume and a large surface area. So that a smaller percentage is going to be groundwater, and groundwater is our accessible water. It's our largest amount of accessible water. So the water that a lot of people drink is going to be from groundwater. So of this surface water here, this small little kind of tan color, of that small amount of surface water, most of it is stored in lakes, and then we have swamps and rivers as a smaller percent. So most of the surface water on Earth is going to be lake water. So we're looking at the water cycle here. So you have a little interactive water cycle to look at, and then you can draw the water cycle diagram, or see, I put a little note here. You can just copy and paste it. You don't have to draw it. This particular diagram is very involved. So just copy and paste the diagram into your online notebook. And then you're going to be looking at the journey of a water cycle. So you go to this activity here, become a blue traveler, and you're going to complete this going through 10 times to see where your water droplet travels to. And then that's what you're going to use for your journey of a water droplet in your online notebook. So you're basically going to this activity, and it's a Project WET environmental education activity. So you're kind of like going through and rolling the dice essentially to see where you land in this water cycle journey. And I've got a little note here that just be patient with it. If the internet or if this site takes just a few seconds to load, just give it a second. So what happens to all the water that we use? So it goes down the drain, and this water is going to end up either going to like a sewage system, or it will end up in your septic tank, that kind of thing. So what happens when you have pollutants? What happens when you have dog poop, and when you have nitrates, and you have all kinds of stuff that's added into the water? So you're going to be watching this video and seeing how surface water and groundwater are connected, and how that infiltration of pollutants is going to impact the aquifer. This little video is from Miss Bond, and it's a little video explaining watersheds in a little bit more detail. And you have a discussion about watersheds right here. This is a little interactive about watersheds. So make sure that you play this little game here to test your skills about watershed conservation. So follow the directions here to be able to help you and get started on that. So this is a picture of a river system to show you some of the different features. So if you look at these particular shapes that you see, a lot of these are erosional features or depositional features. So you have the source for this river system. So I mentioned just a few minutes ago that a lot of runoff comes from snow melt. So if you are in these higher elevations and mountains, when that snow and ice melts, then it goes downhill. So it will eventually accumulate into a river. And these smaller little creeks and streams and things that carry water to the major river in the area, those are called tributaries. A Oxbow Lake is going to form right here. So basically this Oxbow Lake is going to form when you have a meander, when you have a curve in the river that gets a lot of sediment that's built up on the sides of it. So that's what you see happening here. So this was a meander, and then maybe you had like a flood that was carrying a lot of mud and sediment, and that accumulated as the river was moving, and it just kind of kept accumulating. And then eventually the Oxbow Lake is the area where the water wasn't, where it was a meander, and then it got cut off from the rest of the river. And then when you have a delta, it's going to be sort of a triangular feature that's deposition of sediment. So that sediment can continue moving down the river and ends up accumulating as the river is pouring water into whatever that larger body of water is, which is usually going to be the ocean. And this estuary is basically an area where you have a river that's carrying fresh water meeting an area of salt water. So where you have a river that's dumping water into the ocean, basically. So that's where you have the estuary, where the river meets the sea. So you can go to this interactive map, and then that will help you to learn a little bit about river basins. So make sure you draw and label a diagram of river basins. So you can just draw it on paper if you want to, and then just take a picture of it and upload it into your notebook, or you can use Google Draw. Sometimes Google Draw is a little bit awkward to use, so just drawing it on paper and taking a picture is just fine. A little bit of information about aquifers, and this is a cool picture of an aquifer cave. So it's it's water that's underground. Technically, it's a cave. So I just thought that looked cool. So aquifers are the rock layers that will contain groundwater. So just remember your STEM. Aqua means water, and it's going to be able to store groundwater that will be used for drinking water in a lot of cases. So your lab this week is an aquifer in a cup. It requires a good bit of materials and a little bit of time to conduct the activity. I will have this activity set up for you if you would like to come by my room on Thursday sometime to do the lab during your PE class. So I'll have it set up during both labs, and you can get the materials and then do the lab on your own, or if you have some other partners from the class that are going to be completing the activity during their PE time as well on Thursday, then that's fine. You can work together, and then you can just do your write-ups separately, but make sure you clear that with your PE teacher, please. And if you want to do this at home, that's completely fine also. So you don't need a ton of materials, but this one is a little more materials heavy than some of our other activities. So make sure you click on this link to get the specific directions on how to complete the lab. And then this is just your lab write-up. So that is just going to be the document that you will turn in. So this is the last activity that you're completing. There's a little video clip for you to watch about floods and flash flooding. And then you're going to go back to your online notebook and answer those questions about flooding. So this is the last activity in your online notebook. Then make sure you submit your online notebook, and you can complete your quiz for the week.